When I was a kid, our family had a British short-hair named Charlie. He was mean to everyone but me. He was basically my cat. He used to roam around outdoors, but one day he never came back. I cried for days and went out looking for Charlie with my dad, but we never found him. I'm 27 now, and I've been living with my boyfriend for 3 years. When we first moved in, we had a cat in our neighborhood who used to sniff around the bins. We took to calling him Trash Cat, before just calling him Trashy. One time, a few kids walking to school kicked rocks at Trashy. One hit him right in the face. Trashy was a tough, stray cat, so he just ran at the teenagers and scratched one of the boys. The boy took his backpack off and started swinging. That's when I stepped in. I shouted at the kids like a grouchy old man. Trashy had run away during this. That's one thing we learned about him. He was very skittish when it came to noises. One morning, Trashy was watching me from the front gate. I was leaving for work, so I knelt down to give him a quick pat, and he rolled onto his side. The next day, he was on our doorstep, so my boyfriend got the idea to leave a bowl of dry food and water for him. Trashy would eat and drink there every day. At some point, he just appeared inside our house, but we didn't make him leave. We loved him already. Trashy continued to roam outside. He would always be an outdoor cat at heart. He would sometimes leave for multiple days, and I would be distraught. "He'll come back," my boyfriend Jason reassured me. "If not for us, for the food." I got used to it. I would open the door to leave for work, and Trashy would be sitting there patiently. We eventually got a dog door for him to come and go as he pleases. One day, we woke up to find patches of water around the house, and Trashy was soaking wet. He shivered, and we got a towel to dry him, but he wouldn't let us go near. "Did it rain last night?" I asked Jason. "Number? The Bronsons have a pool, maybe he got in?" I was scared. Trashy might drown. I'd never seen him swim before. So we got rid of the dog door, thinking that would solve our problems. But we kept finding him soaking wet and leaving puddles around the house. Every morning, Trashy would dash outside and only return when he was hungry. Eventually, we stopped letting him out altogether, which only made him more anxious. We would find him wet, shivering, and cold, hiding on the second floor of our house. "We'll set up a GoPro," Jason suggested. We bought the cheapest GoPro we could find and attached it to Trashy's collar. At night, we turned it on, and the recordings were saved directly to my PC. After a few uneventful nights, we watched the footage. Trashy simply roamed around the house, jumped onto the kitchen bench top, which he wasn't allowed to do, or slept. I started to feel relieved. Maybe it was just a temporary phase. However, one night, I awoke to Trashy yowling and the sound of splashing water. My boyfriend was at his apartment that night, and though I was terrified to go downstairs alone, I couldn't let Trashy get hurt. I ran downstairs, flicking on every light and searched every room, but couldn't find him. The yowling and splashing suddenly stopped. Then I heard something running upstairs. I held my breath and approached the staircase, calling softly, "Trashy?" Trashy poked his head around the corner. He was drenched again, and so was the camera. I logged onto my computer and found the latest recording before the camera had died. It was disorienting to watch the world from a cat's perspective. The house looked completely different, and I had trouble following where he was. While I was skipping through the video, I came across a scene that didn't make sense. Trashy was in a dark room with a blue light and swimming in some kind of water. I dragged the recording back 2 minutes and hit play. Trashy approached the grandfather clock that came with the house. I thought he was going to walk right past it, but instead, he slipped through a paper-thin gap. Behind the clock was a hole in the wall that led to a thin staircase. Trashy trotted down and stopped at the last step. There was a small, square room flooded with water. Trashy was staring at the surface. All of a sudden, there was splashing, and Trashy fell in the water, yowling. He managed to climb out and ran halfway up the stairs before turning back and staring at the water for a long time, before running up to the second floor where I found him. I called Jason and had him come over immediately. Does that mean you could advertise it as a 3-bedroom house? He asked. I'm not in the mood for jokes. Together, we slid the grandfather clock to the side. There were already scratch marks on the hardwood floor. The hole, funnily enough, was about the size of a dog door. There's no way I'd fit inside, Jason said. I might. We didn't test that theory. Since Trashy could slip through the gap, we boarded up the hole with a large wood chopping board and a 3-liter jug of water. It was more weight than Trashy could nudge out of the way. Jason slept with me that night. We had Trashy in the room with us and the door closed. Later, during the night, I woke up to use the ensuite bathroom and found my bedroom door wide open. Jason, get the fuck up, I whispered. Jason groggily rolled over. What is it, babe? The door, I replied. We sat in bed, both confused since neither of us had opened it. Suddenly, we heard splashing and Trashy yowling, louder than ever before. Come on, I urged Jason. We rushed downstairs to the living room. The bucket had been pushed over, spilling water on the floor. In that moment, all I cared about was saving Trashy. Trashy, I called, but the splashing continued. I lay on the floor and carefully slipped one arm through the hole, shuffling my body until I was inside. The hole opened up to a narrow stone staircase. I crept down, guided only by touch, until I reached the final step. Before me was the square room, with its flashing blue emergency light, and filled with water. I couldn't tell how deep it was, but I could still hear the splashing. Trashy, come here, I called again. Row, Trashy cried. In the dim, pulsating light, I could just make out Trashy's frail silhouette as he desperately flailed his front paws, but he didn't move. He was stuck on something. I dropped into the water and swam towards him. The water was a swirling mix of black and blue. My heart hammered in my ears as I thrashed about. I reached out and closed my trembling hand around Trashy's soaked fur. Then I felt it, a sudden tug. I reached behind to remove what Trashy was caught on, and it grabbed me. A cold, bony hand. I tore my hand back and grabbed Trashy, kicking my legs wildly. I swam back to the stairs, screaming for Jason. Babe, what's happening? Babe! Jason shouted. There's someone in here, I yelled. I managed to get out of the water. Trashy, agitated and scratching me, broken free from my grip and slipped back out through the hole. I crawled after him. Pull me through. I emerged, and together we moved the grandfather clock back in front of the hole. 20 minutes later, the police arrived. They borrowed a hammer from our toolbox and bashed in the wall until it was large enough for one officer, Matthews, to duck through. He went inside and came back out. It looks like you've got a little flooding, but the room's empty. Are you sure this is the only way out? He asked. What are you on about? It's as deep as a swimming pool, I argued. Matthews just shrugged. It's dark, and you were scared. You were probably imagining things. Later, I organized for contractors to come out. They drained the water and sealed the wall off. We haven't had any more incidents with Trashy since, but on some nights, I can still hear water splashing. I thought more and more about what Matthews had asked me. Are you sure this is the only way out?